Television broadcasters are forced off the air in Kenya as opposition leader Raila Odinga takes a symbolic presidential oath of office, despite warnings from the nation's Attorney General. New research shows a toothpaste ingredient could fight malaria. And an exercising robot breaks a sweat in the gym. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Now, television news broadcasters were forced off the air in Kenya on Tuesday as supporters of opposition leader Raila Odinga gathered in a Nairobi park for what they consider his swearing in as president, capping 5 months of political turmoil. Thousands of Odinga supporters are clinging to his claim of voting irregularities in his defeat to President Uhuru Kenyatta in last August's initial presidential vote, which was declared null and void by Kenya's Supreme Court. Odinga and his supporters boycotted the October 26th repeat vote, citing doubts that it would not be conducted fairly. Kenyatta easily won the second election by 98% and was sworn in as the president the next month. Kenya's Attorney General called the symbolic swearing in of Odinga an act of treason. And for more on the latest political drama unfolding in Kenya, VOA's correspondent Daniel Scherf joins me live via Skype from Nairobi. Good evening, Daniel.
Good evening.
So first, there were fears that this could erupt into a chaotic kind of situation. How would you describe the events as you were there?
Yeah, well, it was a pretty amazing turnout. It started out fairly slow in the early morning, just a handful of people, and more supporters started to trickle in. There was a lot of concern that there might be some clashes with police as the crowds grew bigger. There was at least one incident where tear gas was used, but it was not directly at the venue where the so-called swearing in took place. But we could smell a little bit of the tear gas in the air. But for the most part, there were just some minor clashes among various supporters as they tried to get into good positions to see Raila Odinga, the opposition leader, as he was inaugurated, as he said, the president of Kenya.
Now, we know that people expected to see his coalition partners, Kalonzo Musyoka, Musalia Mudavadi, Moses Wetangula. It doesn't appear that they were there. Has there been any explanation as to why?
Well, you know, it's the focus has been on Odinga, so I don't know if it's been made clear as to why some of the other leaders were not present while he was there. Certainly, the supporters were there to see Raila Odinga. They wanted to see his so-called swearing-in ceremony, which has been put off a couple of times in the past, and it was actually put off a couple of times today. Originally, the NASA coalition that he heads was going to have it at 8 o'clock this morning, Nairobi time. They pushed it off to 10 o'clock. It didn't actually end up happening until close to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it was a long day, many hours in the sun for thousands of his supporters who did eventually turn out in surprisingly large numbers, seeing the difference from this morning, at least, until the afternoon.
Now, Daniel, people across the country are watching, expecting to see the events on television, but apparently televisions were not showing this so-called ceremony of swearing in. How was that? Was there an explanation from the government?
That's right. A couple of the independent television stations were effectively shut down their broadcasts today, suddenly stopping. I thought it was something wrong with my cable at first, but as everyone discovered, they had been shut down apparently by the authorities. They had expressed concerns earlier before the swearing-in days, but ahead of the swearing-in, that they did not want the broadcasters to be broadcasting the event live, and so there was some contention within the Journalists Guild whether or not this was an order from the government or if there was just a suggestion. So it's been very very surprising then that these stations were shut down. There was some broadcasting that was able to continue online for a little while. But the stations themselves, yeah, were silenced, and of course that's raised a lot of concerns when it comes to the issue of freedom of speech in the media. We'll see what the authorities say in terms of how they're justifying shutting down these stations. Certainly, there's going to be a lot of questions being asked and a lot of pressure being put on them for why this was done.
But generally, what has been the reaction from the media houses themselves? What have the managers there said?
Well, from what I understand, there's certainly quite a bit of concern among some of the more independent-minded broadcasters and journalists. So I would imagine that they'll be pushing for some solid explanation from the government and to bring them back on the air. So we're waiting to see what'll happen.
Indeed, what a shame. Most people are really concerned that the media in Kenya might be under threat. Daniel, thank you very much for reporting from Nairobi.
My pleasure.
That's Voice of America's Daniel Sheff reporting live via Skype from Nairobi in Kenya. Now, going to West Africa, Amnesty International says the Nigeria Air Force killed at least 35 people in attacks on villages in the northeastern state of Adamawa in December. In a report released on Tuesday, Amnesty alleges residents of the villages described being fired upon by a fighter jet and military helicopters. They attempted to flee. Now, at the same time, hundreds of herdsmen took part in a revenge attack on the communities for earlier killings. The report suggests a deadly crisis between herders and farmers is spiraling out of control. An Air Force spokesperson denied it had bombed any locations in the region or fired shots targeting people, but had opened fire to dissuade looters and vandals. Well, now we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out. And also follow me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Now coming up, could a substance in toothpaste fight malaria? Stay with us. Find out.
This is a country that I chose to become a citizen. I didn't have to become a citizen. I chose to become a citizen.
I feel like America gave me an opportunity to pursue my passion as an artist.
I really believe that clean eating is a way to a more successful life or a happier life, if you want to put it that way.
One of the things that helps me wake up every morning is doing better, being better.
We grew up poor, and so I'm always focused on helping the working class be able to have a more comfortable lifestyle.
I'm passionate about doing justice every day. I oftentimes say that justice is a verb, not a noun. You know, I believe in action and moving the ball forward.
Well, Cape Town, South Africa, residents are protesting as their daily water ration will be reduced to 50 liters starting on Thursday, February 1st, in an effort to conserve the supply. 3 years with very little rain mean reservoirs around the city are about to run dry. VOA's Mariama Diallo reports.
As April approaches, when the city of Cape Town is predicted to run out of water, some residents are finding it almost too much to bear.
They're all trying to pass the buck. Somebody should take responsibility. It's total mismanagement. It's driven by chaos. They've now got this campaign is really being driven by fear.
The city is completely mismanaging the water. They're not fixing the leaks. They're not reducing the pressure in the pipes. They are rolling out water management devices that they know are defective, and they've got no plan.
But South African officials say the issue is very serious and goes beyond politics.
We must depoliticize the drought challenges in the Republic of South Africa. Water knows no ideology. It knows no political affiliation.
Officials have been warning the city's 4 million residents that when the taps run out in April, they'll be forced to collect only 25 liters per day at one of the 200 water distribution points. Not enough for a 2-minute shower in normal times.
While the City of Cape Town works on additional supply, we need Cape Town, our citizens, to help us save more of our existing water resources.
Residents are urged to take precautions.
There are other cities that have come very close during drought conditions to having no water. Sao Paulo in Brazil is one of those. But I think to make sure that all of Cape Town survives day zero and everybody helps each other to get through this crisis, it doesn't become a catastrophe, is the challenge for us Cape Townians to deal with now.
The so-called Day Zero has now been moved up to April 12. Mariama Diallo, VOA News.
And it's time now for health reports. And joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Madu with news of cholera epidemic. Lino.
That's right, Vincent. An epidemic of cholera has hit the Democratic Republic of Congo and affected new areas where it has never stricken before in the country's 26 provinces. Zambia is also battling cholera, but observers say the situation there has been contained. This is Camp Luka in Kinshasa, the capital city of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Thousands of locals here remain at risk due to the recent outbreak of cholera.
My mother has been in the hospital. I can't even look at her. She was throwing up and had intense diarrhea. And we don't know if we might lose her.
Those who deal with their case at home and arrive here late are extremely dehydrated. As soon as they're admitted, by the time you put a drip in their arm, they might die. Because back at home, they had already lost a lot of water and did not compensate by drinking it.
The latest cholera outbreak has affected 24 of the 26 provinces beyond Kinshasa. The highly infectious disease thrives in environments of poor sanitation, contaminated food and water. Most people recover from cholera if treated promptly with oral rehydration salts, but can die within hours if not. To contain this epidemic, the government has opened free treatment centers across the city. Zambia, DR Congo's southern neighbor, is also battling with a cholera outbreak. In a desperate measure to the outbreak, the government ordered immediate closure of all food and retail outlets in the country's capital, Lusaka. Street vending and public gatherings have also been banned.
Business has become slow because of this disease. We depend on these businesses to take our children to school. We can't afford to be staying at home because we'll just starve. We just want to ensure that the market is clean so we can continue operating as usual.
Authorities report that there has been a total of 3,260 cases and 74 deaths countrywide. They say figures are, however, scaling down as the country started vaccinations against the disease, targeting 2 million people.
After an initial downward trend, then the cholera cases started intensifying again in early November, and health authorities reached out to WHO for more support, including helping with a request for 2 million doses of oral cholera vaccine from the global stockpile. WHO helped the government put together the plan for this and trained about 500 health and community workers in how to administer the vaccine.
The United Nations has raised the emergency level of this situation in the two countries to a maximum. Whether this action will reverse the situations is a matter of wait and see as to just how this translates in the territory. And joining us in the studio now for more on the subject is Danielle Reznik, a senior research fellow with the International Food Policy Research Institute's Development Strategies and Governance Division. Ms. Reznik, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So DRC is very much battling the outbreak of cholera. Things seem to be getting better in Zambia. Let's focus on Zambia. What can we learn in terms of how they were able to get to where they are now with being able to decrease the numbers.
Well, I think as your story was showing already, they called on the WHO and other international health authorities to help them. Earlier this month, around January 10th, the WHO came in with about 2 million oral rehydration vaccines, and they've set up a cholera treatment hospital. So I think by getting that international assistance and the oral rehydration therapy, which works almost instantly, that's been a key part in solving the crisis.
But there are some people who say, even though things are looking better in Zambia, it is not time to relax, right?
Yes, that's absolutely true. Zambia, and particularly Lusaka, the capital, has been hit with these cholera outbreaks almost every year since the early 1990s. So we know that this is a recurrent issue, that even though the crisis seems to be waning, it reoccurs every year during the rainy season, which is from around October to April.
So if it's a recurring issue, what is the problem? Why is it that when every time there is an outbreak, it seems like no one is prepared for it? Where is the problem?
Well, there's a massive sanitation deficit in Lusaka. You have many of the residents in the city are living in what are called shanty compounds. So these are either informal, some are unauthorized settlements around the central business district of the city. Many of them they're not connected to any sanitation or sewage system. The largest compound has about 24,000 pit latrines. And so during the rainy season, these often overflow, and you have a mixing of human waste with the water system.
So it seems to show a disparity in terms of access to sanitation and hygiene.
Absolutely, yes. Lusaka is a very unequal city, and you have about 85% of your kind of richest population have access to good sanitation and clean water, and only about 10% of the poorest segment of the population.
We've seen some very strong, perhaps, measures that the government took. They send in the military at some point. They close down the street vendors. So what is your take on that, and how effective these were?
I don't think it's very effective. I think it's a very reactive measure in a crisis situation. Shutting down basically the place of business for almost 80% of the city's residents is not a good idea. This is where they get most of their income. I think a better solution is actually teaching street vendors, marketeers good hygiene practices, safe food handling practices, and actually bringing some of the sanitation and potable water into the marketplaces. That's a better solution than bringing in the military to crack down on very poor people.
So then, moving forward, given that this is an issue that happens every year, it's recurring, so what should be done differently, and what can other countries learn from Zambia? Because we see this happening in DRC and other countries also going through cholera outbreaks. What are the lessons to be learned here?
Well, Zambia is a bit unique compared to DRC, where a lot of it's been in the conflict areas. Zambia is a peaceful country. It's one of the wealthiest countries that's been affected by this cholera outbreak. And so one of the solutions is upgrading the sanitation system, bringing in potable, clean water, informing people of safe food handling practices in advance. Zambia is working with a number of donors to upgrade sanitation in Lusaka, but the challenge is it's very expensive, it's a very long-term measure, and as I mentioned, many of these, you have a large share of the population in these informal settlements, so it would involve some displacement of these populations to upgrade the housing infrastructure. But we do need to plan in advance. We do need to think about bringing in sanitation practices into places of work as well as in housing communities.
Prevention is definitely better than care, as we hear very often.
Yes, absolutely.
And before we wrap very quickly, in terms of appropriate regulation for informal markets and as it relates to health, or what would you say quickly that would be some perhaps 1 or 2 steps?
I think absolutely these markets need drainage. In the rainy season, there's no drainage, no place for the rainwater to go. And so you often have vendors sitting on the ground in the mud, selling produce, fresh fruits and vegetables in the mud because there's no drainage. So I think bringing in drainage. And then I think you need to have some type of potable water and hand washing, soap, in a lot of these markets where they are selling fresh foods. And often these are just washed in the rainwater. So those would be the 2, if we really limit it to 2, those would be the 2 I'd focus on.
Okay, Daniel Reznik, thank you so much for joining us today.
Welcome.
And that was Daniel Resnick. She is Senior Research Fellow with the International Food Policy Research Institute's Development Strategies and Governance Division. Now, a common ingredient in toothpaste could be developed to fight drug-resistant strains of malaria. Scientists at Britain's Cambridge University found it has the potential to interrupt the infection at 2 critical stages in the liver and the blood. VOA's Faith Lapidus reports.
Brushing your teeth helps prevent a buildup of plaque bacteria, thanks to one ingredient in the toothpaste, triclosan. The antibacterial agent could also help fight the malaria parasite, even those types that have become resistant to other drugs. Malaria, which is spread by mosquitoes, kills around 500,000 people every year, the vast majority of them children in the poorest parts of Africa. Once the parasites are transferred into a new host, they work their way to the liver before moving into the bloodstream and spreading throughout the body. Scientists have known for some time that triclosan can halt malaria parasites' growth at the blood stage of the infection. The new study shows that it can also target the parasites in the liver. With triclosan able to target 2 critical points in the malaria parasite's life cycle, scientists say the parasite will find it difficult to evolve resistance to a triclosan-based drug. I'm Faith Lapidus, VOA News.
And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Linor Moudou. Vincent, back to you.
Well, Linor, thank you very much. I'll be sure to watch Linor Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. And it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Could this be your next workout buddy? We'll be right back.
In Kenya, opposition leader Raila Odinga, quote-unquote, sworn in as an alternative president in front of thousands of supporters in Nairobi. In Ethiopia, the African Union leaders launched a major aviation agreement aimed for cheaper air travel in Africa. In Liberia, President George Weah outlines his plans in the first year to the Liberian parliament. In South Sudan, civil war that erupted in late 2013 keeps an estimated 2 million primary school children out of the classroom. Finally, in Libya, 2 women died and many others are presumed drowned after a migrant boat carrying dozens of people sank in the Mediterranean Sea over the weekend.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. Meet Kengoro. A Japanese research team has built a humanoid robot that resembles the intricate muscular and skeletal structure of a human body, making it capable of mimicking human activities like push-ups and sit-ups, with 174 maneuverable joints powered by 116 motors and even a cooling system that resembles the way a human being sweats. Kengoro can demonstrate complex body movements that no other humanoid robot can match. Now, researchers also see potential applications in making better crash test dummies, improving sports analytics and entertainment users in theme parks or film. Well, next up, Prague is joining other cities around the world with a new ban on free plastic bags. But one Czech startup has got a far more radical solution to the problem of plastic waste: cutting out plastic completely. At MIWA, short for minimum waste, entrepreneurs are trying to get rid of plastic waste by not creating it in the first place. Now, the company has designed a product distribution system that doesn't use packaging. Instead, goods are packed into reusable capsules that are delivered straight to the shop floor. Packing-free stores already exist here in Prague and in other European cities too. Now, and finally, a South Coast town in Western Australia is in the midst of its busiest tourist season to date, thanks largely to a social media trend sparked by mobile home tourism or van life. Traditionally, the farming town, Esperance, is perched next to some beautiful scenery, and people are now arriving from across the globe to capture that perfect Instagram post. Esperance is largely booked out during the peak summer period, so the locals are trying to convince tourists that the town is just as spectacular either side of summer or even during the depths of winter. And that's what's trending today. Now, it's big, bold and bright. A London muralist honors immigration art murals that go viral on social media as he immortalizes the Andy Warhol of Marrakesh. VOA's Caroline Turner has more.
Spray can in hand, British Ghanaian artist Nikwe Dep-Dussain applies the final touches of color to his latest mural, enlivening an otherwise drab side street in East London. His mission is to paint a positive picture, literally, of immigrants in Britain in an era when he feels they are increasingly maligned by gentrification, Brexit, and the rise of nationalism.
I'm a visual artist. I started painting in the street via the graffiti scene in 1985.
Drep's latest mural depicts a British Moroccan artist who is known as the Andy Warhol of Marrakesh.
The subject of this particular painting is Hassan Hajjaj. Hassan owns a shop around the corner called Larache, and Hassan's been here for years, way before Shoreditch became the Shoreditch that it is now. And his work is a fusion of his Moroccan background with pop.
The muralist wants to use his rising profile to showcase these community champions.
The series is about migration, and the motivation is gentrification, in terms of like, with all the changes happening, we really have to understand that the communities are the soul of the communities.
He paints from his own photographs and credits his vibrant and joyful style to something in his subconscious and background.
With Brexit, and then with things that I'm experiencing with gentrification, essentially I was just inspired to make some work about celebrating the people who make so many positive contributions to where I live, which is London.
Drep, a father of one and a former graffiti artist and art teacher, has produced his work on streets around the world. In London, he gets informal agreement to convert walls into canvases, often just knocking on people's doors to ask permission. His You Are Enough Portraits project, completed last year, went viral across platforms like Instagram and Twitter and was covered by British media. Carolyn Turner, VOA News, Washington.
Lovely. That's our show for today. Now be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings today, Break Africa. That's between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Woodwork is any part of a house or building that is made of wood.
Crawl out of the woodwork.
This expression sounds troubling.
I won! I have the winning lottery ticket.
Oh, that's great. How much money did you win?
I won $25,000. But please, don't tell anyone.